So this is your sample that I've given you to work with. When you're drawing with the brush, there's drawing with the brush and applying the brush. The brushes are this icon right here. And when you look at all these brushes, now these are all loaded up because of this file. If you go down here, you'll see bristle brush, and then you'll see artistic. These are where a lot of the good ones are located. Artistic, ink, paintbrush, scroll pen, watercolor. You're drawing with the brush, but really you're applying the brush. So if you notice, all of these are just simple lines that could have been made with anything. They could have been made with the pencil, they could have been made with the pen tool, anything, but you can apply the brush qualities to it. So I want you to go through and apply the brushes to this, and the way that you'll do it is you'll grab, you don't have to grab them all at once. This one's artistic ink. If you go on the brushes panel to this little library icon, now some of these are open, and if you hover over them, you can see, but the easiest way to fill out this is to go here and say artistic, and then go to ink, and it'll give you a whole panel of the artistic ink brushes. So you take a pen, any kind of stroke, and you can apply that one. And if you want to change it, like that one's nice, there's two ways you can change it. One is up here. That's applying that as a uniform line. You can also apply it kind of more uneven like that, so it goes thin, thick, and thin again. So you can change it there to that. You can change it to this. You can change the width and the brush. So these are all things that change the characteristics of a brush stroke. So I want you to try out all the ones that are artistic ink here. So there's that one, and there's a ton. So you just kind of have to play around. So you could also go with just this kind of tapered stroke of a brush, like an ink brush. You could go, they even have these scattered pens, but it's kind of a waste of time. I don't think you'd use that. I want you to get really familiar with all the different styles that you can apply to a path. Essentially, it's just a path. Remember how when we talked about colors, there's like all these different ways to get there? This is the same sort of thing. The difference with a brush is that if you put in the brush tool, if you go to your brush tool and you pick one of these, like I've picked this artistic ink, and I'm going to do it non-uniform. I'm going to get my tablet right here. So now I've got a one point uneven kind of bubbled, and this. It will let me draw and see this as I go. Okay? So that's what you can do with the brush stroke that you can't do with like pencil. When you draw with the pencil, no matter what brush you pick, you're not seeing it live. Does that make sense? But watch, even though I drew that with the pencil, I can still apply this brush stroke afterwards. So if you want to be able to see it as you go, if you want to pick something, like let's say over here you go to artistic watercolor. So then on the brushes panel, now this is the panel for that particular set of brushes, artistic ink. You want to go back to the brush panel, and any of these that you want to add to your brush panel that you're going to be using, you just double click on them, and now it'll be there. See, it's right here. So you can kind of fill your brushes palette, and then you can remove some of those. Like I could remove, this is fire and ash. I don't want that on there. Remove, take that out of there. So you've got your artistic ink, you've got watercolor. So the next one would be watercolor, right? So artistic watercolor is going to open up all those artistic watercolor brushes. Now, if you're doing something that's watercolor, you might want to actually see the effect of that as you go. That's when you would use the brush. And you can, of course, also change the color. So this color on all these is going to be the stroke. So I could make this kind of a pale blue watercolor stroke. If you look at them too close, they don't seem as realistic. So once you apply the style of the stroke or the style of the brush, then you can amend the, you could make this into a light yellow. You can take the stroke size down to 0.5. And what's funny is as you start to play with these, and I want you to really play, you can adjust the color, you can adjust the width, but open up each one of these libraries. So we go down here, and we're going to go to hand-drawn brushes. So these are under hand-drawn brushes vector pack. See it there? Now that's going to open up a whole panel of those. So I'm going to apply this style to that one. And because it's so wide, I might take that down to 0.5. And let's see, I might even be able to go 0.25. There we go. And maybe I don't want to make that black. Maybe I want to make it like a charcoal gray. So this is just a page of you to explore what some of these brush styles are. But I want you to keep in mind that if you use the brush tool, you're actually drawing live with these. Anything else, like if I made a circle, I could still apply the brush to that. A path is a path is a path. The only difference with the brush tool is a couple things. One is that you brush with it live, which I think does help sometimes. Now, before you start drawing with the brush, you can actually affect the settings by double clicking on it. If you're drawing with a tablet, you can put it more towards accurate because you've got a smooth line. If you're drawing with your mouse or something else, you want to put it more towards smooth. But the problem with smooth is if you're trying to get very specific little notches and things, it's going to smooth it out. You don't want to fill your brush strokes. If you keep it selected, then you can kind of see your progress. Also, if you're drawing with your tablet, you can affect the brush itself. So let's say I pick, let's pick this one, which is just a nice, even ink stroke. So notice when I draw with that, if I've got a tablet, what I might want to do is open this up, and it has all these options. So when you open up brush like this, by double clicking on it, I can make the width pressure sensitive. That's the number one setting that is useful for these brushes. So I'm going to make this pressure sensitive, and I'm going to adjust the width here. Other than that, I keep it pretty simple. Now try that. So anywhere, when it's saying apply to strokes, it's saying, do you want to apply that to what you've already drawn, or do you just want to start that from here on? So I'm going to say leave those strokes. Now when I draw with my brush on the pad, let me get it back here, here we are. Then when I press down hard, it's going to go thicker, and it's going to go lighter when I move off. Now it's too thick, so I'm going to open that back up, and I'm going to take the width down a little bit. Leave the strokes as they are and just apply to new strokes. And I can also affect it here, 0.5. But you'll notice that as I push heavier, you see that one? That's a good example. These brush strokes can be adjusted so that you know how when you're drawing with a marker or a pencil, you kind of pull up to get that kind of wisp. Sometimes when I'm drawing something that is a certain style, like let's say I want to do like a pencil style, I don't want to see all this in here at the same time. So I'll take all that out, and I'll just load up like 4 or 5 charcoal pencil styles to kind of rotate between and try out. And you'll kind of know it when you see it, but this will help a lot if you go and apply all of these. So you'll get a good idea of what's available to you. Oh, the blob brush. So the blob brush is actually a brush that draws a shape. So I'm going to use this as my template to kind of draw. So if I'm drawing with the paintbrush, and I'm just going to go with the basic shape here, I'm going to have it ink like that. With just the brush, you'll notice that it draws a path, right? That's a path. And I can apply any of these afterwards. So maybe I initially was going to do that, but I want to apply watercolor or whatever. When you draw with a blob brush, it actually creates a shape. So the blob brush is located behind the paintbrush tool. And I actually like this one better myself. And you can just go, the bracket to the left is smaller, and the bracket to the right is bigger. So if I wanted to, for example, draw this bird, or if you wanted to draw over your sketch, I'd get this nice and small. Now, do you notice that my stroke is black? So that's what it's going to use. So I start drawing this, and notice how it's kind of shaky. partly because I'm using my trackpad, but look what it does. It smooths it right out for me. This is a really great, but what else do you notice about that? What's the difference between that and this? Pin, all of these create paths. And even all the shapes we made the other day, all paths. Only the blob brush does this. The blob brush is actually creating a shape. So the advantage to that is a couple things. One, of course, is you can put a stroke on it. The other thing is that you can affect pieces of it. So you can go in here and take this and maybe make it more pointed right there. So you can affect the stroke more. I find this to be more of a true painting drawing tool. Like you could also make it go thicker in some areas, but it gets even better. Not only can you do all that with it, but when you're drawing with the blob brush, you can actually keep adding. It's going to keep adding to the shape. So I'm going to make this smaller. And I want to get the same width that I was drawing with before. So I just hold the circle there until it looks about the same, right? And then I keep drawing with it. So now I'm going to take this and go like that. And it keeps adding to the drawing. So a couple of things with the blob brush. One is you double click on this and you can make your adjustments. And these are important. So right now I have it all the way almost to smooth because I'm drawing with my trackpad and it's helping me out, smoothing it. But if you're drawing very precisely with your pen, this also controls the size of the brush, the angle, the roundness, and if you're using your stylus and a pad, you can actually affect the pressure. So if you put that on pressure and you put the variation, like a lot of variation, 2, maybe even 3-point variation, now when I draw, and it won't work with the trackpad, it will only work with my stylus. Now when I draw, let me get the stylus over here, there we go. How heavy I push makes a big difference. So I go, whoop. Or it's not making as much difference on this. That might be the settings on my stylus. Oh no, there we go. See how when I barely touch it, it's super thin. I'm barely touching it, and then I press more and more and more. So that's where your stylus can work for you if you adjust the blob brush settings. Again, this is not on the brush settings. This is your blob brush tool. Keeping it selected is good because then you can see your progress and it keeps adding to it. So if I were drawing this bird, which you're going to be doing, let me grab all of this and get rid of it first. So if you have your logo and you want to just ink it, you've sketched it out, it's looking good. Which I really like the blob brush for this, and I'll just take my blob brush and I'll keep working on it. So I'll get all the settings the way I want them as far as how thick, and I'll just start drawing. Like I might start drawing this beak. And you can see now I have the thin and thick thing by how hard I push, which I don't really want. I want this to be perfectly even. I want an even, nice, even line. So I'm going to take this to fixed because I don't want it to vary. I want a nice, even inking. So I can take this and start again. And the beauty is the way to draw with this is a little at a time. So you can actually draw, you can start with this and then stop, make another piece and stop, come back in here. Whoops, too high, that's okay. Stop. And then to correct this, you can use the eraser or the smoothing tool. And we'll get to the smoothing tool with the pencil also, but right now I want to show you. So let's say that I'm not crazy about how this line, this one kind of missed the mark right through here. I can take the eraser tool, and the eraser tool is kind of like the blob brush in that it has settings, angle, roundness, size, and all that. The only thing it doesn't have is the smoothing option, so it's not going to smooth that out. So I'm just going to take that and I'm going to erase some of this that I'm not happy with. And then I'm going to go back to my blob brush, and then I'm going to go back to the blob brush and keep drawing, and it'll add to it. So now that's added to it, and I can still go in and even this out. So I can take the eraser tool. So what I like to do is draw the whole thing first, and then take the eraser tool and kind of even that like that, and it'll smooth it out. It does a pretty good job of making it smooth. You can also take away the extra like that and then go back with your blob brush. It'll still add to this. Still go in there like that. And see how it kind of smoothed it out? There we go. And then I can take and erase some of that. That's why this makes such a great drawing tool, because you can affect it from both sides. Those are two great editing tools for the blob brush. The other one is under pencil. There's this here called the smooth tool. For people like me who are not great at hand doing illustration, this is a way of kind of optimizing the edges. So see how there's all these anchors? Remember when I told you the less anchors, the better? Look at this, because I've fixed that and repaired it and stuff, there's a chunk of 2 anchors here, there's 2 here. If I take this smoothing tool, and again, it's from the pencil palette, and I just kind of run it over that, and I run it over this, it just smooths it out. And the more you do, the more it smooths it out. Like, see how there's 2 anchors here? I'll smooth that out. This, especially, this corner needs to be smoothed. Smooth that out. But this is also, it's a path, it's just a thick path. So I can also take this and affect it. And maybe I just want to affect it a little bit. You can get rid of some of these anchors by hand. Yeah, it is. You can only do it on the anchor, so there's an anchor. You take that one out, take that one out. The smooth tool kind of removes the extra anchors, or you can do it yourself by hand. So I can take this smooth tool right here, round that out. Bottom line is that when you guys are doing this bird drawing, what I want you to do is draw on this top layer. And I want you to use, I would use the blob brush, because the other thing you can do, you're going to go in and outline this whole bird using that. And as you add to it, like look at these wings. So if I go over here, I can keep adding to these wings and do them one at a time. So I might do that line. Okay, so you can keep adding. Now if I pick up my blob brush and start and touch anywhere here, it'll still add it. Like if I go like this, it'll add to that, it'll add to that. So if you can do a long, smooth stroke, my hands are a little bit not working well with this stylus right now, which is not the stylus' fault, it's my fault. Partly because I made some bulletproof coffee this morning. And you're just gonna move around and just do one at a time. And when I do this part of the wing, it'll join it together. So I'll bring this wing up, and when I touch that, it becomes part of it. Does that make sense? Just put some music on and sit and work on this. Now, when I want to color this in, and I want you to color it in, what you do to color this in is, and this should have been on all those paths I accidentally put on the brushes layer, so I'm gonna have to move this color layer below it. So I did my inking on the brushes layer. You should do it on the draw on this layer. Now I can take and grab my blob brush. I'm gonna make this pale blue. We'll call this a bluebird. I'm gonna make my brush big because this layer is under the other layer. I can just start drawing. So blob brush is also good for coloring in. If you want to do it as fast as possible and then go clean it up afterwards, you can do that. So when you have all of your ink done, and you can see that I'm erasing this, but because I'm only on a layer that's the color, it's not touching the ink drawing. Isn't that cool? I could draw with this thing all day long. I love the blob brush. So it's just important that you find your style. It's going to take you a little bit. Find your style of drawing. Like, maybe you're someone who draws a little bit at a time, or you are better with big, bold strokes. Usually once I've been drawing for a little bit, I do better with the strokes all at once. So again, bracket up and bracket down on your keyboard for the size. And so for these, I might just start, just drawing them. And it'll always take the color of the fill unless there's the color of the stroke unless there's none. And you can also affect the corner. So if I drew this, and now I'm drawing in the blue that I was originally gonna do as just the color, but you can take those and change the color to black because it's an object. So that's the blob brush. Blob brush is awesome. Then there's the pencil tool. Pencil tool right here, and with the pencil tool has also got settings. You double click on it, and you'll see the same kind of idea. You have to get used to this. Almost everything has this, all of these tools. Fidelity is either accurate or smooth. I always push it towards smooth, but if you've got a really steady hand and you're good with your stylus, you can push it to accurate. I never want to fill my brush strokes or my pencil strokes because that creates an odd, I'll show you what it does. It's not something you want to do. So if we put the fill on yellow and the stroke on brown, you see what it does? So on the brush or the pencil, you don't want to fill it. So now let's go back to the pencil. So I don't want to fill. Keeping it selected is awesome because you can keep adding to it and you can edit it. Option key toggles to the smooth tool, really useful. So I'm going to show you these three things, how they work. This wispy hair. So if I'm doing this wispy hair and I have that selected as keep selected, let's say I start drawing this and that goes up and I'm not liking that, I can draw over it and affect it like that. Like let's say I go like this and oops, that went too far out. All I got to do is touch on that same pencil stroke like this and it'll modify it. So this one went a little too far out also, so I'll just redraw over it and it brings it in. And the reason is because we checked that box that said keep it selected. So I can keep modifying. And you can just keep adding to it. So I can draw this, I can draw down here. And any curves that I don't like if I want to affect this one, see how it's keeping it selected? I can draw over it and fix it. And also, do you see how smooth it is? I've got it almost all the way to smooth, so it's rounding out any shakiness. If I take off keep selected and say okay, then I'll have an easier time doing these eyelashes because I can draw them and it won't keep modifying it. So I can go one here, one here, one here, one here. It doesn't modify it. So make sure that if you're drawing a couple things in a row, you don't want to have it keep selected. But if you want to affect your line, so like doing her portrait, especially the nose, this would be really helpful to keep it selected because I can keep fixing this. Oops. And it'll modify it and I can keep going with that. The other thing is, notice it had on there, option key toggles to smooth tool. That means that when I'm drawing her portrait right here, I can just hit the option key and I'm in the smooth tool. Kind of nice. So that's what that means, is that I can smooth as I go. Now remember, no matter what brush stroke I select, this is not going to draw, and this nose would be a perfect example when you could use keep selected, because I can fix this. I can make that nose a little bit better, a little bit at a time. Okay, so that's the pencil tool, and then of course you're drawing past. So even though you're not seeing it live, you can grab all this, go over here and apply a sketchy style to make it really simple. So that's your sketchy style. The pencil tool, you remember this one? This is the shaper tool that we drew the other day where you can just draw a circle and then suddenly it becomes a shape. This is your regular drawing pencil. Smoothing tool. Don't forget that doesn't matter how you draw the path. The smoothing tool will smooth it out. So it'll smooth out a blob brush or a paintbrush or just freehand. Anything you do, it doesn't matter if you use the pencil tool, you can still use the smoothing tool. This is a path eraser, which you can just kind of decide that you don't want this to go that far and erase some of that. So just like the eraser. The join tool will join two paths together. So these might be too far apart there. They have to be kind of closer together. I'll show you when we draw the hearts. So over here to the hearts, I want you to draw 4 different hearts. Now that you know these 4 tools. So I'm going to draw one with the pen. Okay, so you would just maybe go up, go down, and then come here. And then we're going to go in that same direction. Remember, we've been pulling to the right. So I'm going to go here and pull. And then I'm going to go here and pull when you want to do something like this, if you hold the Option key, it gives you independent controls of the two handles. So if you're drawing a heart like this and you want it to go dive into that corner just by holding the Option key. So there's my heart that I drew with the pen tool. I'm going to color it red. Now let's do one with the brush tool. So I'm going to go over here, just the regular brush tool, right? So the brush tool draws live with whatever selection I've made. And I'm going to make a selection, just a simple calligraphy tool. And I'm going to make it 0.5. So I'll draw a brush with that, like that, there. So there's my brush with that, and I can apply whatever stroke I want. So I could go to a simple line stroke. I can make it as thin as I want or as thick as I want, and just make it a simple outline. Okay, so there's my brush that I drew a heart with. Now with the blob brush, I want to draw a heart. I'm going to go down here to the blob brush tool, and I'm going to draw a little bit at a time, right? Because I can. And it keeps adding to it. And then I can take the smoothing tool, round out that corner, round out this corner, round out this corner, round out that, and kind of keep tweaking it. And I can also get rid of any little lumps and bumps. And I might want it rough like this. It just depends on what style you're doing it. I could try the smoothing tool first, but it's also going to need some more blob brush. And so you see how it keeps adding to the shape? Now I could also color this heart in with this on a different layer. So I could go to new layer and make this the heart fill in. And it's underneath. I got to drag it underneath the layer that I drew that in. Now my blob tool, instead of using it as a drawing tool, I'm going to use it to kind of create this loose background for it. I'll make it large because I don't want to draw it just a tiny, tiny bit at a time. And I'm going to fill this in with, let's say, yellow. And I'm going to give it kind of a loose style that's not quite filled in, so it has kind of a painterly style to it. And then I have to make sure that this goes below. So that gives you kind of that loose painterly style. All of that paint is one object. I want to show you the difference. So this is the heart if you color it in, right? So now you have this kind of loose heart with the blob brush. If you tried to color that in with just a regular paintbrush, look what it would create. You go like this, right? Paint it in, paint it in. It creates paths. So that's not going to help you coloring something in. It's actually doing that. Whereas the blob, if I wanted this to be, maybe this left side, I wanted to go a little darker. I'll make this one orange. And then I'll just put that. And so then you have, or you could put the yellow on top of it and let it show through. And if I wanted to amend this yellow, I could just keep going with the blob brush like that. Fix the yellow. So when you're doing these, so the blob brush one, you could take this yellow out, all these colors, and make a simple heart like that. And then with the pencil, remember the pencil, you can keep adding to it. So you could go like that, and that nice sharp corner. We want to make this stroke red, and we want to make it nice and thick. I can take the pencil and fix that by just kind of drawing over it. Now it rounds it out more. And then of course, all of these are going to create paths that can be fixed anyways. So you could take this bottom one and go really steep. So on the pencil tool, if you double click here, remember that keep selected is what's making that happen. So sometimes you don't want that to happen, right? Because you're drawing and sketching. That means that every time the path touches the path, you're going to lose some of it because it thinks you're modifying that initial path. So sometimes you don't want that there, and sometimes you do. In this case, if I select this, all I'm doing is touching this path with a slightly different path. So I can make this one higher up. I'm not using any modifiers. Or if I want this one to go further down, as long as it touches it. If it doesn't touch, it won't modify, it'll just add. this is what I want you to do. I want you to go through, get a feel for what all these brushes look like so you can apply them. And also, one more thing about that pencil tool, the way we can add to it like that. Let's say that you drew a circle, and you're drawing from the center, nice and even, it's looking good, and you just want to make this a little bit pointy on the sides. You can do the same thing by just crossing over. You can add to your pen, because a path is a path is a path. Whether it's drawn with a shape, a pencil, or a brush, it's all a path. The only one that's the most different is the blob brush. So if I drew a blob brush, it keeps adding to a shape, and it can be modified. So I want you to draw over these templates to create them. I want you to draw 4 hearts with these 4 tools, specify all these brushes, and then I left a blank sheet here. If you have time, and I'm not going to make it mandatory, but if you have time to take something under there, the way you would do that is you just place, and you find something that you want to sketch. Find something cool like this tree. I drag to see, that's going to affect what size it is. So if I wanted to draw this tree, I would place it there, and this is where I'm at, image. So it'd have to be on its very own layer. So I'm going to grab that image and put it at the very top, double click on that layer, and I can dim that image 20% and lock it. Now it makes a great template. And I can take my blob brush, which is how I would draw this one. Because of the way this points, you could draw this with the blob brush, or you could do, you could make your brush pressure sensitive and use your stylus. You can keep adding to it like that. And then you can make it smaller and do these tree branches. And then if you wanted to, it'd be better to use a pressure sensitive here, but if you didn't, you could always tighten these up like that. The blob brush gives you all kinds of options for the width and curving it and doing things because there's paths on both sides.